Hi everyone, welcome back to our ongoing series on how to create a life operating system in Notion. Today we're going to look at goals, and in particular 2 goals databases. I'll talk about the relationship between them, but just as importantly, how they fit in the middle of our alignment zone, in the middle of our pillar to pipeline pyramid, so that they are aligned with the projects and the tasks beneath them, and the pillars and the guiding principles above them. It's super important that your project management system, your life operating system, your knowledge management system has the high level and the low level very clearly interlinked and aligned, so that the visions and aspirations you have, you're moving forward towards them. You're taking steps day by day. Small increments of work are adding up to the mid-level and the high-level aspirations and visions and goals you have for your life. So the only way that happens is if you have a system where they're all interconnected and that individual hourly tasks are not independent of the big aspirations and goals that you have assigned for yourself and that you've prioritized. And at the same time, you need to set priorities. You need to have clear designations of what matters most in terms of the goals you're pursuing and how to measure and evaluate whether you're moving toward or away from your goals. So all of that is in today's video. The previous video was on the projects database, so that one rolls very directly into this one. The way you accomplish your goals is you establish projects. Projects move you towards your goals. You define specific goal outcomes and you determine which projects you need to undertake and complete to accomplish those goals. And then projects are made up of tasks, individual units of work. Those tasks advance you towards completing the projects, just like projects, one or more, advance you toward completing your goals. So it's a hierarchy and then it rolls up very directly. But goals are also in service of something bigger. Goals are in service of your values and your aspirations and who you want to become in your life and the things you ultimately want to achieve and be known for, and things you want to do for your family and other people, for your business. So it all interrelates, and that's why we have this system, so that we can define the things at the top, the things we ultimately want to achieve and become, and we have various levels of execution to make sure we get there, all the way down to the hour by hour, day by day activities we focus on. So let's get into it. So from our top level dashboard, the command center, we jump into the alignment zone. And in the alignment zone, we have the pillar to pipeline pyramid. We previously did a video on the task database, which are what I call the action items. The last video prior to this one was on the projects database, which showed us how we created projects and aggregated tasks to accomplish those projects, and that all of those projects are assigned to one or more goal outcomes. So the projects are not just off ad hoc. They are in service of very specific outcomes we have set as goals. The next level above in the pillar to pipeline pyramid is the goal outcomes, which are very tightly attached to the value goals. So we're going to talk about those 2 today in this video. So let's open both of them up. One of the reasons I like this toggle system is you can open up any 2 of these right next to each other and look at them in tandem. So in the goal pipeline, which is the center of the pillar to pipeline pyramid, we have value goals and goal outcomes. We talked a little bit about this in the alignment zone video. So if you haven't seen that, that gives you an overview of this entire dashboard. But now we're going to go in deeper. So goal outcomes are the very specific things that are measurable and trackable. As you evaluate whether you're moving toward or away from the goals, you know when you've accomplished them because they are very specific, they're measurable, they're quantifiable. Value goals are not. Value goals represent things that you value, things that you want or hope for, that are important to you, that you're willing to work for. But they're not measurable, they're values within your being. Like, value goals are things that you value, but not so cut and dry, mechanical. And the reason I have 2 of these, I have separate value goals and goal outcomes, is that you have to have something measurable and quantifiable. So you know if you've achieved it, it's not ambiguous, you can't cheat with your subjective evaluation. But I find if you just start to list your goal outcomes, you will limit yourself, first of all, to things that are measurable. And those might not really be direct proxies when you're just thinking off the top of your head to the things you value the most. And they also feel very transactional. They feel kind of cold. They feel like, yeah, okay, if I have to measure that, that's a viable goal outcome. But that doesn't really speak to my passion for what I'm trying to get at beyond the numbers, like what's in my soul. So value goals are the things I value. I find I can come to goal outcomes that are more meaningful and more relevant if I start with less rigid requirements for measurability and quantifiability. I start with something like, I want a thriving business. I want a business that's just moving, that's dynamic, things are happening, it's growing, it's got people who are engaged and fired up about it. Like, that's not measurable, that's a subjective thing, but that's what I want. Like, if you really ask me what I want, that's what I'm looking for. Well, how do I get a thriving business? I need to start by defining some things that are very specific I can work toward. So as a first step, I have defined a goal outcome of creating and launching 3 products. That is a specific goal outcome. I need 3 products that I launch and make available to the public. These need to be products that are relevant to what I care about and what I feel I have to offer. So that is a goal outcome. Now in my goal outcomes database, I have create and launch 3 products. So this is a relation from this database, the value goals database, to the goal outcomes database. Now in the goal outcomes database, we look at create and launch 3 products. That has a direct link to the value goals database. So these 2 databases are directly connected through these relations. Every single value goal must have at least one, sometimes more, goal outcomes. Every goal outcome must have at least one, potentially more, value goals. Nothing can be orphaned and stranded by itself. If it's worth having as a goal, you need both. Values need measurable, quantifiable objectives. Goal outcomes, to me, need to have something that speaks to me more deeply, something that touches my values. So I find that essential. It's funny, I made this system because it just helped me establish the goal outcomes in a more meaningful way. To me, the reason for this 2-step process is that I get better goal outcomes. If I just come up with goal outcomes on their own, they have less meaning, they're not as internalized, they don't touch my values, and therefore I'm less motivated to do them, and they just feel transactional. So I basically created this as a 2-step process to create and define them in a way that means more to me emotionally and in terms of things I value, while at the same time creating the much more actionable definition of outcomes that let you assign projects and tasks to achieve them. Now, value goals could have multiple goal outcomes, and you might finish one goal outcome, achieve the measurable goal, and then you're done with that. But the goal of a thriving business, once I have those 3 products, then I set a new goal outcome for that value goal. So that value goal will constantly have another and then another and then another measurable goal outcome as I achieve one after another. So the value goal will last much longer than the goal outcomes. The goal outcomes will be checked off once you hit that specific target. Value goals remain things you value. As long as you value them, they remain value goals. You might get tired of them and then you check off and eliminate that. You'd move it to a completed status, but only once you no longer value that. But goal outcomes check off to another status, completed, once you hit that measurable target. At that point, if the value goal only had one goal outcome, you would have to assign a new goal outcome. So you'd have to reach further for a bigger number or a measurement on a different spectrum, but something that moves you toward the value goal now that you've completed the first goal outcome in service of that value goal. So I hope that makes sense. So I created this because it just seemed intuitive and like a logical way to get both the things that mattered to me and the measurable process. So I've recently discovered that the system called OKR, which stands for Outcomes and Key Results, I've always heard that term, but I didn't really know how that system worked. But apparently that system is fairly similar to this. Outcomes are similar to the value goals. Key results are similar to the goal outcomes. Although I think the terminology of value goals and goal outcomes, to me, it speaks more clearly to what we're doing. I mean, objectives is such a broad, ambiguous, non-specific word, but a value goal is a goal regarding something you value. And if you want to call that an objective, great. If you want to call goal outcomes a key result, those two align pretty nicely, I think, in terms of definition and phrasing. So it's essentially the same thing. Now let's just dive into each of these databases so you can see a little bit more. Since the goal outcomes are measurable and you can track progress, we have a progress bar, similar to the one I showed you in the projects database. This will have a goal, and that could be tied to a very specific number of things. Say you want to do 10 public speaking events. You can count them off 1, 2, 3, 4 as you do them, and it'll track. But in most cases, I find that just counting the projects or tasks that move you toward it as a one-off measure in the completed category. In most cases, that's not that meaningful because not all tasks or all projects are equal. There's a weighting issue. And so often you have to add projects or add tasks that you didn't anticipate in the beginning, so you didn't have the full count from the outset. I find that if you just make a subjective judgment on what the completed versus the goal is, you can keep a pretty reasonable eye on what's getting done. And again, you only assign these completed and goal tracking metrics for the goal outcomes that are designated as underway. We have 3 status settings: underway, not started, and complete. Obviously, complete is finished. The view should be filtered to remove those that are complete and just show you the underway and not started. The not started ones, of course, you're not tracking. Up on the value goals, also have a designation of status. Underway is green. Green for me is always means in motion and active. So paused would mean you started it, but you had to pause it. Either you had too much on your plate or something came up. For whatever reason, you had started it, but you need to stop it now. So you just put it on pause. Waiting means it's next in queue. It has never been active. It has never started, and it's next in line once you have the bandwidth for new value goals. Now, it's a little bit of an odd designation when you're talking about value goals, but there are some things you know are going to be important. They're in the future. You know they're going to be priorities in the future. So why not just list them, have them here? During your quarterly or annual reviews, you can assess whether the future for that value goal has arrived or not, but it's there when you do these periodic reviews. But during week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter, you're operating focused just on the underway value goals. Priorities just help you sort out in your mind what you're emphasizing at any given point. I designate them by business, health, or family. And then I like to list challenges. Like, what is the biggest obstacle in your way to achieving that? It just forces a little bit of reflection and thought. And then, of course, they're all linked to goal outcomes. Back down on the goal outcomes, I do have a term so that I can get a ballpark sense and sort by grouping whether I think this is something I can achieve within 3 months, something that's going to take 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12, or over a year. It just helps me break it down so I can see what the time horizon is for execution on the goal outcomes. Now, just like they're assigned upward to value goals, they're also assigned downward to projects, or projects below them are assigned up to goal outcomes in most cases. So in most cases, you achieve a goal outcome by coming up with a project or 2 or 3 and working toward the goal outcome through the project. In some instances, you don't actually need a project. You could just have a series of tasks, or a habit could help you get there. For example, one of my goal outcomes is to read and summarize 20 leading books in my field. By summarize, I mean have in one of my vaults, I have my book vault. I will read the book and do extensive notes and summarization of that so that I can get the most knowledge and learning from that book. Now, that's a goal outcome. I don't actually need a project to read books. Reading books is a habit. I have a habits database that defines the habits. So I don't actually have a project for my book reading and summarizing goal outcome. However, in habits and routines, which is another database, which we'll get to a little bit later, I have my daily reading hour. To give you a peek into my habits database, I have a few settings, but frequency, daily. It's related to what goal outcome? It's related to what pillar? The learning pillar. It's related to a workspace on thought enhancement tools and techniques, and it's tagged to learning. And a time of day is assigned. So daily, in the late afternoon or evening, every single day, I have a reading hour, and that moves me toward my goal outcome of reading and summarizing 20 books. I do the summarizing as I read, and it's in service of the learning pillar. So every single goal outcome must have either a project or a habit and routine. Habits and routines are not specific units that you're checking off and have a finish date. They are daily or weekly things you do on a regular basis. Those can move you toward a goal outcome, but most of the time it's a project because it's just the nature of goal outcomes. Projects are in most cases the unit of work that moves you toward it. Just take a peek inside these workspaces. For value goals, I have the goal of building extraordinary knowledge in my field. So how do I go about that? Well, I have it as an underway status. I have a priority assigned to it. I have the challenges defined for what I think I need to overcome to do it. The challenge is that there's a massive amount of material to cover and that consumption is slow. Well, that's life, but I'm defining it up front so I know what I have to overcome to get there. It's in the business category. It's attached to 2 goal outcomes: read and summarize these books and interview 15 experts in my field for the podcast I do. So by doing those two things, I'm moving toward gaining extraordinary knowledge in my field. There are other things I do too as a matter of routine and habit, but these are two explicit goal outcomes that I'm measuring and tracking that are tied to my value goal of achieving extraordinary knowledge in my field. So if we open that up, we have a workspace for this value goal. We have a couple questions I always like to ask myself for each value goal. Why this value goal? In this case, in terms of achieving extraordinary knowledge in my field, to serve clients with better insight, to have more to share at a higher quality. How will you achieve this? List a couple steps. Voracious reading, listening to targeted podcasts, smart selective video consumption. Speak with thought leaders on my podcast at events and in online groups. So just be very deliberate. Lay out specifically how you're going to get there in broad strokes, and then create the goal outcomes that are going to get you there. In this case, I have two. They're the same ones up here, but now we've got all the information. So if we are thinking it through more thoroughly, some of them, you might actually build out this workspace and add notes and comments and resources and articles or whatever that might help facilitate this as you achieve different goal outcomes and hand off information to future goal outcomes, all in the service of extraordinary knowledge in your field. So that's looking inside of one of the value goals. I don't use the workspaces in the value goals that often. I do use them a lot in projects, as we talked about in the projects database. That is the main workspace for execution on projects. But somewhere in the middle, more than the value goals, I do use the workspaces in the goal outcomes. Because as I've said, many times you'll have many projects to get to a specific goal outcome. So you don't want to accumulate all the knowledge inside a project if when that project dies, that knowledge is still valuable. If the knowledge is valuable across multiple projects in service of a goal outcome, it should be aggregated in the goal outcome workspace. So for example, I want to create and launch 3 products. That is a goal outcome in service of solid and growing financial footing. So I want to create and launch 3 products. Now this one has a lot going on, and my subjective assessment is that I'm about 50% on my way there. Now I've defined, this is in service of 2 value goals, a thriving business and a solid and growing financial footing. The thriving business is about business, solid and growing financial footing is more about personal. So that's why I have them as 2 separate value goals. Then we've got projects, which we'll get to below, the pillar it's in service of, which is product development, action items, which are specific tasks, and the term is 3 to 6 months. So those are the database items. Now down here, we have the workspace. As always, I ask why this goal outcome. So why do I have these goal outcomes? Well, I'm being very deliberate and specific so that I have clarity on what I'm doing to create products that are less dependent on my time. I love working with clients and I do a lot of that, but that limits the number of people I can reach and the number of things I can do. So the second bullet point is to better serve greater numbers of people wanting to learn these skills. So I'll always work with clients, but I'm going to change the mix. So I'm going to work with fewer clients and then spend more time on these products that reach a greater number of people. Now my products will still have some of my time involved, but it won't be the same percentage that my one-on-one client coaching work does. And then how will you achieve this? So I bullet point some of those, and then I lay out the projects. In the projects database, we had a table from the task database that showed us which tasks will help us succeed with that project. Now we're in the goal outcomes database and we're looking at which projects will help us succeed at that goal outcome. It's the same thing, just at a higher level. So the projects underway to create and launch 3 products are to find and hire a video editor, create this membership group, create course number 1, learn essential software, interview and find. So I have all these projects, some of which are in progress and some of which are future, and one's even a maybe someday. So again, they're all linked to action items, which are tasks. They're all linked to goal outcomes. They're all linked to pillars. But this lets me organize and sort them in here. So as I'm working on the overview of how to get these 3 products underway, I have clear visibility on what projects are underway. And I can easily click in to any of those projects and then look at what tasks and action items are executing toward the successful completion of that project. Then notes and workspaces. If I'm working on this goal outcome with a broader number of people, with a team, we would share our aggregated thoughts and information we've collected all down here. This whole area here is created using a template. Create a new goal outcome. We just hit new. It gives us a generic one, filling in anything that we had filtered by, but all we were filtering here by was not completed. So now here we hit that, and we've got all of this. It's automatically entered through the template. The template includes the filtering by goal outcomes, which is the database we're in, contains. Leaves this blank so that we can click it and select the goal outcome that we're in here now. We haven't titled this, so demo goal outcome. So just come down here and hit filter, and you want to filter by the goal outcome of the one we're creating. It always puts it on top when you're inside of it. Hit that. We haven't created any yet, but it just now filters to only show us the projects in service of this new demo goal outcome. By adding them here, they by default, because it's filtered for this particular goal outcome, will have that tag entered automatically. And you build it out, and then you've got a workspace. You fill in why this goal outcome, and then you lay out your projects. Could be 1, could be 50, whatever gets you there. So that is how you do it. It's just a higher level of what we saw in the projects database in terms of the goal outcomes, but with the extra nuance of tying these two together. And that is how goals are done in this system. So if you have any thoughts or questions, leave them in the comments below. Happy to engage in further discussion on that. This is all about being very specific and deliberate, making sure that the tasks you're doing day to day and hour by hour are connected to the higher level aspirations of your life. And this is sort of the mid-level interconnective tissue. So it's really important. This is what bridges the high level with the low level. And at the value goal level, we're starting to get into the higher level, the aspirations, the things you value most. The value goals should be things that are deeply meaningful to you. And this is how it translates down to your hour by hour and day by day task execution. So after looking at the projects database in the last video and the goals databases in this video, next we're going to look at the pillars and the pillar support items. And then the video after that will be the extremely important cycle review video. That's where you do the weekly, monthly, and quarterly reviews, which is what ties all of these together, keeps them on track, keeps them aligned. These work because in designated cyclical periods, you go in and check on them and you make sure they are the things you value, they are the priorities you want to set, and they're still relevant. The things that are done are checked off. The things that need to be moved into active status are moved into active status. And the things that are going sideways or not quite getting there are addressed. It's during those cycle reviews you see where the problems are occurring and you get everything in line. But by having these databases in this pyramid hierarchy, in the pillars to pipeline pyramid, it's very easy to quickly do a weekly or monthly or quarterly assessment. See what's working, see what's stalled out, see what's orphaned, and get it back on track. So the system makes those reviews extremely easy and relatively quick, and it makes it kind of fun. And the next few videos are really important. If this is of interest, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to get updates on future videos. Leave thoughts or questions below, and hit like if you found this valuable. I also write a newsletter called Mind and Machine on increasing human capability. I give away several of my best Notion templates to anyone who subscribes to the newsletter. You can, of course, unsubscribe at any time, but I hope you'll give it a chance. I work super hard to pack it with a lot of valuable insight. The newsletter link is also below in the show notes. Thank you for watching. Lots more to come.